Hello everyone, good morning. We are from Group 12 and we are going to talk about roles and grammatical features. My name is Angel Melinda and my student number is 084.
My name is Devi Anggreni Iksan and my student number is 056.
My name is Aidatul Sofia and my number is 62.
My name is Winda Larasati. My student number is 077.
Okay, let's get started on rules, grammar, and meaning. Okay, so why we must learn about rules? It is to understand rules are used in phrases other than English. There are central participants such as agents and patients, and peripheral participants, which some of them called circumstances, such as place and time. The distinction between the central participants and the peripheral circumstances largely corresponds to the distinction between the core of a clause and the periphery of a clause. Okay, let's move to the criteria for roles. There are several of them in criteria for roles. The first thing is agents, the doer, in action with volitions. Okay, let's have some examples. Ayala went to the ball. So Ayala is the doer. Lois broke the cup. So Lois is the doer. Okay, the second one is patience, a role that affected by agent action. Okay, let's have some example. Memu ate the spaghetti. So the spaghetti is that affected by agent's action, which is the patience. George built a house. A house is the rule that affected by agent action. The third is instrument, a rule that inanimate and animate objects in action. This rule use word preposition with. Okay, let's have one example. My mother cooks with her friends. And the fourth is theme, a natural rule from the meaning of specific lexical verb and should be handled in the lexical entries for those verbs. And the next one is benefactive, a rule that has benefits from an action. Benefactive signed by for. For the example is Captain Wentworth recovered the property for Mrs. Smith. The next one is goal, a location or entity in the direction which something moves. Goal generally signed by to. I went to Jakarta last week. So the location and the goal is in Jakarta. Next one is the experiencer, a living entity which experiences the action with psychological experience. Next one and the last one is place, a role that denotes the location of an action. Let's have some examples. Hartfield's house in Surrey. Indra is in his home. Okay, so for the next material will be explained by Saidatul.
Thank you, Angel. So we are going to talk about roles and role players. As the explanation above, there are agents, and I'm going to talk about it in detail. First, we have prototypical agents. In prototypical agents, human beings acting of their own volition, initiating an action, carrying it out using their own energy and producing an effect on something. The example is Jim was happily chopping logs. The second, agents do not have volition. It do not initiate an action and do not expend energy. Nonetheless, They produce an effect by virtue of being in certain position in certain place. The example is this arch supports the weight of the tower. The third, agents initiate an action, but do no more because they merely give a command to others to carry out some action. The example, the guard marched the prisoner around the yard. The last, agent is conceived of as using its own energy, such as a living creature, a machine, or a natural force. The example is the flood swept away whole villages. And the next is instrument role. The typical instrument on the periphery of the set. Tools such as a saw, hammer, screwdriver, and so on. For example, Catriona opened the door with this key. This is a commutative, which means accompanying. And then we have problems with patience in planting roses. The example A, the gardener planted roses in garden. Roses here is the patient, and garden here having the role of place. Example B, the builders built the wall with concrete blocks. In here is having the commutative role. And then C, the builders built the wall from or out of concrete blocks. The blocks here having the role as source. Example D, Helen sent a scarf to Jim for Margaret. So in here is a goal. Two phrases are complements and in the core. And then E, they headed for Glasgow. For in here is optional and adjunct, and the phrase is in the periphery of the clause.
In grammatical future, we have case. Case is used for the system of noun suffixes typical of Indo-European languages. And the case suffixes signal the relation between the nouns in a clause and the verb. However, English does not have case suffixes, but it does have possessive suffix. Next will be continued by Daisy.
And the next topic is gender. First is animate and inanimate sounds. And then the term masculine, which is the example comes from Latin language, dominus or master, for boy, goose or god, but also some inanimate objects such as orchis or garden, exercitus or army, and mouse or custom. For the feminine, it applied to cases of Latin noun can be seen as not entirely arbitrary if we take into account the fact that nouns denoting women in whatever capacity are typically female. For the example, mater or mother, filia or doctor, femina or woman are feminine, pater or father, filius or son, fil or man are masculine. Servant is male slave, serva is female slave, and so on. And then the term neuter nouns appear at first sight to offer no generalization, but an important one can be met. No nouns denoting animate things are neuter. For example, kind or child, weak or woman, legend or girl, heroine or young woman, fire or animal, bird or horse, and crocodile or crocodile, which appear in German nouns. For the mood, There is statements, questions, and comments. For the example, this is happening and that happened. They can ask questions about situation and about participants in situations. Is this happening? Did that happen? They can require or request that a particular situation be treated or not treated. And then the term subjunctive mood related to special sets of verb forms. English used to have such forms, indeed, in a sense, it still does have them, but they have fallen into disuse and are now almost extinct. For the example, the French language, which means his doctor is first in everything, and he wants that his doctor is first in everything. And then the term epistemic and deontic modality. First is epistemic. It derives from the Greek episteme, or knowledge. An epistemic modality relates to the way the mode in which speakers know a situation. Do they know that it exists? Do they consider it as merely possible? Or do they treat it as necessarily existing? Also, they have seen it themselves on the basis of evidence. And for the example is she could or might or maybe in the library, which means it is possible that she is in the library.
Next, there is what we call aspects. So aspect contains of two dynamic verb and static verb. Dynamic verb is the verb that describes an action rather than a state. Meanwhile, a static verb is the verb that describes a state rather than action. So static verb is divided into three: activity verb, achievement, and accomplishment. Activity verb, which denote situations that are seen as going on in the same kind of way over a period of time and as having no built-in boundary. And here achievement is often have to do with the beginning or end of an event and are conceived of as having no duration. Accomplishment related to situations with a component, an activity phase, and then a closing phase.
And then the next topic is tense in English. Traditional grammars of English talk of past, future, and present tenses. One view is that past and present tense go together since they are both formed from verb stems plus the suffixes s or present and ed or past. The traditional future tense is formed from the auxiliary verb shall and will plus the verb stem. It will derives historically from a verb that was equivalent to one or intent and can still be used with this meaning. And for the English perfect, for the example, the snow has blocked the path. Analysts have found it difficult to classify the perfect as an aspect or a tense. It has two constituents, has or have, and a past participle.
Next, we have voice. Voice consists of two, passive and middle. Passive to mention only the patient and to omit the agent. And middle. Many middles have what is called as episodic interpretation. That is, they denote a single episode or event. The middle construction has no auxiliary verb, whereas the passive has the auxiliary verbs be or get. So this is all about our explanation. about role and grammatical future. Thank you for watching.